الأربع. We have been looking at the four relations, the four possible relations between two concepts or two words as to their connotational meaning or conceptual meaning. With reference to their referential meaning, and last time we looked at the first one, and the first one was that of tasawi, or the relation of equivalence. So logical equivalence. And in the relationships of equivalence, as we saw, is the symbol for his three bars, and as we saw in the relationship of equivalence or tasawi is when two words have related but slightly different connotation, but their reference is always the same. Their reference is always same. Sorry, not there. Their reference is always the same. Always the same. So then we would say that there's a relation of a tasawi between those two words, or equivalence. Even though their connotation or their ma'na are slightly different, their reference or their masadaq is always the same. They are always applied to the same thing in the external world, the same type of thing. And we gave several examples of that. One of the example was so we gave several examples, but one of the examples, for example, just take from different languages. So in Arabic, khubz, and in English, bread, their meaning is, or their relation is that of tasawi, because their reference is always the same. And within a language, like in Arabic, insan and bashar, both apply to human beings, even though their connotation, or for example, if you look at in the dictionary, their connotation or their, dictionary meaning would be different, and dictionary meaning is one type of connotation. Or if you say insan and dhahik, a laughing being, then depending on how you define laugh, Arab logicians always assume, and even Nahvis always assume, that dhahk is something which is specific to human beings. Although that might not be true. And the same with insan and natiq, rational being. As I said, in most Arab logicians assume that kullu insan and natiq, kullu natiq in insan. So every human being is rational, and every rational being is human. but that's not necessarily what the Quran says, or even other philosophers say, for example, Kant. But that's not the point. The point is, whenever you have two words which have different connotation, different conceptual meaning, different dictionary meaning, but the same reference, always the same reference. So insan is always referred to human being. Bashar always refers to human being. Then the relationship between insan and bashar is that of at-tasawi, or equivalence. And if we want to generalize it, we can say that if one word we call it A and the other B, say when you have relationship, or in Arabic we say ba and ha, for example, then we will say the relation between, if ba and a, or A and B are equivalent, have the relationship, they mean, their literal meaning is slightly different, but they always refer to the same thing. We say the relation between them is that of at-tasawi, or equivalence. So that was the first one which we did the last time. Now let's go to the next one, which is exactly opposite of at-tasawi, or equivalence, and that relationship is at-tabayun. At-tabayun mean contrary. At-tabayun. So the two words have the relation of tabayun when they have different connotations, and they never refer to the same thing ever. So basically that's like so let's take two words. The example our authors give is, for example, that of human, insan, and hajar, human and stone. They have different meanings, connotations, and they never, insan never refer to stone, and stone never refer to human being. So stone in the outside world is different, and human beings are different. These words never, this always refer to this always refer to this. They never crisscross in any way. So tabayun, there's a ban, there is this gulf between them in that sense. They don't share any sameness as far as the reference is concerned. So that's the second one. And they are also converse of each other when they put in a universal negative proposition. So for example, you can say that no stone is human being, and no human being is stone. We can say لا شيء من الحجر إنسان, and we can say لا شيء من الإنسان بحجر. So it means this is universal negative statement, this first one, and the second one is universal negative statement, and they are converse of each other. That is, you have so S and P and S, you have kept their quantity and quality the same, but interchange their subjects and predicates, so made predicate into subject and subject into predicate, and that is going to be a valid argument because stone and human are exclusive of each other. They don't have any common reference. So and here قضية كلية سالبة, so one, and this is قضية كلية سالبة 2, and one of them is the عكس or converse of the other one. So the ba and jim, and this one is jim and ba. And in more mathematical you can say A and B are has relationship of contrariness when they don't share any reference with and how. So this is the second relation. So now these two relationships. Now the third one, third and fourth. Now in the first two one we have, in the first one two words have the same reference, so they always share the reference, and this in the second one they never share the reference. In the third and fourth they share the reference. Sometimes, and sometimes they don't. And in that case, if the flow of this sharing, so to speak, is one way, then we have one relationship, and if it is two-way, then it is another. So we'll look at that now. So the third relationship is called al-umum wal-khusus wajhi. Wajhi or min wajh. And this happens when you have two words A and B, ba and ha. Both of them, sometimes they share a reference and sometimes they don't. So for example, if he gives you an example of aswad and abyad, so aswad mean black and abyad mean white. So these are two words which has different connotation. Now sorry, the example is which. So for example, if we take here الطير, a bird. So bird and white, they have different connotation, different meaning. And the reference, they don't always refer to the same thing. But it's also not like, so their relationship is not that of tasawi or equivalence, but it's also not the case that they never refer to the same thing. So it means that they never share a reference, or they never gather in a reference, both of them. So that excludes the first and the second. On the other hand, it happens that a bird, for example, sometimes share reference with whiteness or white, and white sometimes share reference with bird, and not always. So, for example, they gather in a white bird, for example. So a white bird referred to a bird and refers to a white. So they gathered here, both whiteness and at-tayr. So, but we can have a black bird. So here bird is there, but whiteness is, and we can have a white man, for example. So we have whiteness there, but there is no. So they sometimes share a reference in both way, from this side and that side, from the side of A and from in the side of B, but not always. So in that case, we have relationship is called al-umum. Al-umum, umum mean generality, and wal-khusus mean particularity or particular. Wajhi, so wajhi mean aspects. So in some aspects they share a reference, in other aspects they don't, and that's true from both sides, from the side of A and from the side of B, from the side of a bird or from the side of a white hair, for example. So take another example, for example, haywan, animal, and aswad, black. So the relationship between haywan and aswad is that of umum and khusus al-wajhi, in the sense because they gather in black animals, but they don't gather in, for example, white animal. And similarly, they gather in black animal, but they don't gather in black man, for example, from this side. So that's so in terms of proposition, we can say that animal, black, some animals are black. There's some black things, some black things are animal. So they only apply to particular affirmative proposition, and in case of particular which we represent by I, So in the case of particular affirmative proposition, the proposition in which these two terms, the terms who has the relationship of umum al-khusus al-wajhi appear, they have a converse relationship. So some animals are black is true, and some black animals is also true. Some white, some birds are white, and some white are birds is also true. Instead of animal, you can say human being, and it would be the same. And in Arabic, if you want to say the same thing, you will say, or just change from black to white. So al-haywan and abiyat, animal, and white, they have also a relationship of umum wal khusus al-wajhi, because we can say بعض الحيوان أبيض. Okay. And we can say بعض الأبيض بالحيوان. And as we can say, see, their negation is also. So there's a so this is كلية جزئية موجبة. Proposition قضية موجبة, قضية جزئية موجبة, and this is قضية جزئية موجبة, and they are acts of each other. And also, when you say بعض الحيوان بأبيض, you can also say بعض الحيوان ليس بأبيض would be true. Some animals are not white. And similarly, you can say بعض الأبيض ليس بالحيوان. That would be true. Some white things are not animals. So not only that they are converse of each other, their negations are, corresponding negations are also true. And their corresponding, not negation, their corresponding negative propositions are also true. Should be very cautious about using the terms in logic. And the last but not least is al-umum wal-khusus al-mutlaq. So this is the case when there are two words and they share some reference, but the flow of that reference is only to the one side. In a sense, I will explain in a minute. So, for example, if we talk about insan, human being, and haywan, animals, humans and animals. They share a reference sometimes. But that's from one side. From the other side, they always share the reference. So, for example, whenever you have human beings, from the side of human beings, they always share a reference with human being, in the sense that every human being is also an animal, but not the other way around. So you would say A and B in this case have different connotation. They share reference always from this side, but not always from that side. From this side only sometime, because not all animals share reference with humans. So only some animals share reference with humans. So this one is called al-umum al-khusus al-mutlaq, because the sameness of reference only flows in its totality, only flows from one side. To take another example, for example, the relationship between al-haywan and birds, for example, a bird, for example, a طائر, for example, an animal, or an animal and a bird. So the relation between them, they have different connotation. Sometimes they have the same reference, but that's only from this side, and they have always the same reference from that side. So every time you, from the side of animals, they always shares reference with a bird, but from the side of bird, they don't always share reference with. No, the other way around. In the sense that from the side of, I should have written this there. الطائر. الحيوان. So that would be animal, and that would be bird. So they share reference, always share reference from the side of bird, but only sometimes share reference with from the side of haywan. So every bird has the same reference as the animal, but not every animal has the same references. So for example, in the case of bird, actual bird outside, it is a bird and it is an animal, and that will always share this reference. But in the case of monkey, for example, share reference with haywan, but doesn't share reference with a thigh. So from this side, it sometimes shares reference and sometimes doesn't. The relationship is called al-umum wal-khusus al-mutlaq. Al-umum wal-khusus mutlaq. Similarly, for example, human beings. I don't know whether I already gave this example. Haywan. So from the side of insan, so this human being outside has the reference. So human being is all insan, human, and is also animal. So insan is always going to be sharing reference with the meaning of animal, but animals sometimes does, as in here, sometimes does, as in lion, for example, share the reference with animal, but the lion is not a human being, so doesn't share reference. Here human beings are animals, and so it shares the reference. So from this side it is absolute always, from this side it is only sometimes. So we can say kullu insanin haywan, every human being is animal, but you can't say every animal is human being, but you can say some animals are human beings. So the corresponding true relation between these, if you put in terms of proposition, logical proposition, or categorical proposition, is between universal affirmative and particular affirmative. So the converse of universal affirmative, if you change its quantity, it is true if the relationship between two terms is that of al-umum and al-khusus al-mutlaq. And we can say that the reach of if A is the first side and B is and this is ba and this is ha, then we can say that A is greater than B and ba is greater than ha in the case of umum al-umum wal-khusus mutlaq. So for example, animal so hewan, for example, or in the case of human, and this is al-insan. So insan is animal has greater coverage than humans, and we say that the generality of animals is al-am mutlaq, unconditionally. The generality is unconditionally in the sense that so human is al-am al-mutlaq. Should write that there. In Arabic, like this, should have been the other way around. Insan is al-am al-mutlaq, and humans, animals are al-akhas mutlaq, because every human being is animal, but not the other way around. So we'll stop here, inshallah. Or to just sum up, the relationship between two words, if they have the same reference always, is that of at-tasawi or equivalence. And if never have same reference, that is at-tabayun, contrariness. And if they share reference, in that case, when some of a sometime they share reference sometimes and sometimes don't, and this relation of sometimes is from both sides. So A sometimes share reference with B, and B sometimes share reference with A, and A sometimes doesn't share reference with B, and B sometimes doesn't share reference with A. And the last one is when they share reference, but that sharence of reference is from the side of A, it is always sharing reference with the B, but B is not always sharing reference, it is only sometime sharing reference. So in the case of equivalence, we can say all A are B and all B are A, so they are converse of each other In the case of tabayun, we could say no A is B and no B is A. They also converse of each other. Only difference is in the first one it is a universal affirmative, and the second one it is universal negative. Now in the third one you say some A are B and some B are A, so they are converse of each other, but only in particular affirmative, that is I. And in the last one, for all humans, all A are B, but we can't say all B are A, rather we say some B are A. So the converse of universal affirmative in the last case, al-umum al-khusus al-mutlaq, apply only with the limitation, and that limitation is that, so this is particular affirmative. So the universal affirmatives converse in the last case is always particular affirmative. So it equal to its converse with the limitation that you change the quantity from universal to particular, and you keep the quality same, because this is affirmative, this is affirmative. Okay, so we'll stop here, inshallah.